This beautiful country of ours, Kenya, when we look at the housing market, it is characterized by less than 30,000 mortgages for a country of 50 million people or thereabout. So 30,000 versus 50 million, that is not, we can't say there are few housing or mortgages, it is a broken system. And when you're dealing with a systemic failure, you can't wish your way out of it. You must make bold decisions as to how to do that. One of the things that you do is to go and check people that have succeeded in making sure that the ratio of their mortgages to GDP, for example, is acceptable. Ours is unacceptable. It's one of the lowest. Yeah. Number two, the World Bank did a study, very, very detailed study that I would really wish that many people can get their hands on in 2017. That study is titled Unavailable and Unaffordable. Part of that report, there was a case study done about Mukuru, informal settlement. And Mukuru is important, and I'm going to use Mukuru and Kibera just to try and set the scene. Mukuru, when we did the study, we found that majority of the people there live in shanties or these tinned room units. They paid on average about 2,500 shillings every month for rent. But the biggest challenge is what we call the penalty of poverty. And the penalty of poverty is that our good people, Kenyans, and these are not people who are staying in this informal settlement waiting for a handout. These are working people. Pay 172% more for water than you and I do. They pay between 45% to 147% more for electricity. Why? The electricity there is illegal connection. So the slumlords and what we call structure owners that have gone and built on private land, because Mukuru, Kojenga, and Viwandani, and Kayamba, that is private land. They have gone and they built those houses is private land. So when they make the connections, it is not legal. So first of all, they overcharge our people, but they don't even pay KPLC. Number two, you have got all these water barons who supply the water. They deliberately ensure that there is no water in those places. And in any case, it will be very difficult to take those services in a place like Mukuru. Why? Because if government goes and tries to improve infrastructure on a private land that has sort of people have gone and invaded or have are squattering on it, then you're like legitimizing it. So it is not as easy of an issue to deal with a slum like Mukuru, as an example. But how did we get there? Because slums don't just fall from heaven, or they don't happen overnight. There is a professor in California that has done an in-depth study on the issue of urbanization and rental. And what they found out is that where you have got very high income inequalities, like we do, okay, high income inequalities, rentals tend to go up, right? So rentals in a place like here where we are quite high, and they are beyond the affordability of most of the people here, most of the working people. So what do? You do something what is called gentrification. You push people out. But where are they going to go to? The people who are living today in Mukuru, where do they work? They work industrial area. So when you push them out because there is no market that can be able to afford them, what do? They go and take up whatever land is available and they put up structures in there so that they can still be closer to work. Because you can say, why are they not going to Mlolongo? Or why are they not going to Mavoko, Athi River? Why are they not going to Kajiado? Because that would be too far away from where they work. Remember, they walk to work majority of them. So I think context is important, because if we don't understand what we are solving for, then we get caught up in the mechanics of why you're solving it like this and not like this. So I think context is important. Kibra is a bit different, because Kibra, majority of it was government land. Okay? So in Kibra, and we've done quite a lot of upgrading of Kibera over time, is because that is government land where people again have gone and settled. We have a program called Kenya Informal Settlement Improvement Program, and part of what we do is that we look at such people and we do what is called tenure regularization. Because they are there irregularly, we go and we give them titles where they are, okay? Because they've been there for generations and they're not going to go anywhere. So we might as well regularize them and give them the titles, and they start building. So that's point number one, which is very, very important. Now, our dear country today, in 2019, we conducted a study of the number of informal settlements that we have in Kenya. We have over 1,400 across the country. So let us first of all come from, let's construct what is the discourse, because it is important. What is the thesis that we are talking about? That discourse is our market, our housing market is broken. All right? Because if we don't agree on that, if you think that whatever is happening, just around here, there is a big slum down the road. Okay? If we don't think that we have a problem, then this debate becomes very difficult. We can differ on how do we get out of there, or how do we solve it. The second point I wanted to put across is the issue of the evolution of housing in Kenya. And you need to go back to the pre-colonial, okay, Kenya, where for 33 years, there were only about 14,000 housing units that were built in Kenya by the colonialist. Why? Because the housing policy of the colonialist was segregation, okay, and to deny, okay? So that's why they made sure that majority of the indigenous people did not have housing. Post-colonial, very important in the 60s to understand what happened, because there's a lot that happened. In the 60s in our country, we came up with the accessional paper, and we established the national housing policy, which is very, very important. That was in 1967. In 1967, that is when we came up with the National Housing Corporation. We, as a government, funded National Housing Corporation. That is why, you know, the estates in Madaraka, Langata, you go here to Nyayo High Rise, all those estates, right, were built using budget money from the 60s. Then in the 70s, we started allowing a lot of private developers to come into the market. So between 70s and 80s, something interesting happened. If you may recall, maybe some of us are young, so it's a little bit of history. And then I'm sorry if I take too long, but I think context is important. If you remember, in the late 80s, we had something which is called structural adjustment. What was structural adjustment? The economies were not doing well. We had the government expenditure was very high. So the IMFs and the World Banks and the UN came and said, you need to do something as government. You are spending too much money on your wage bill. You're spending too much money building houses for people. So around that time, government was compelled, because we needed money now. We were struggling. And the only place we could get money is the IMFs and the World Bank. Sounds familiar? Yeah. That time, now, it is a case of what do? I stop this program, I get fresh money. So we exited as government from providing housing. Okay? We exited in the 80s. I am the PS for Housing and Urban Development. National Housing Corporation is a state corporation under me. Yesterday and today, I am dealing with the budget for next year, next financial year starting July. Take it from me. And if you don't believe me, you can check the record in Parliament. We have not given National Housing Corporation 1 cent since.
Since the 80s.
So what has happened? National Housing Corporation that had been providing a lot of housing became like a private developer. They have to go to the market and borrow because they're not getting any budget money. And then you add the government bureaucracy that comes in with indecisions. Even to buy paper, I don't know, there must be a tender committee and there's all those things, while they are competing with people who can sit over lunchtime and say, hey, you have cash? Yes. I have land, we start building tomorrow. So National Housing Corporation DNA changed, okay, from one that had cash to one that is competing, but in a very inefficient structure. So the dwindling of publicly delivered housing became a reality. And then the rise of private housing came into place. That's why you have now we have almost abandoned that responsibility and left it to the private sector, which is not always a bad thing. But here is the problem. Nairobi, now there's a study by Center for Affordable Housing, which is a global organization that has conducted extensive studies. If you go to their website and get the latest information, it shows that Nairobi's cost of land relative to the development in Nairobi is the highest in the continent now. So how do you have expensive land and affordable housing in the same sentence?